Long Island medium Theresa Caputo is currently embroiled in a bitter legal battle. Her father, Nicholas Brigandy, left her a valuable estate before he died. But a neighbor recently claimed that the property belonged to him, not Theresa. Theresa, however, counters that her father has written the property in her name, and that she is the sole owner of the property and no one else. Theresa is now in a legal battle with her neighbor, where the decision will determine the ownership of the property. Theresa Caputo, known to the world as the Long Island medium, had always claimed a deep connection with the spiritual realm. But now she found herself battling not unseen spirits, but a very real, very angry neighbor. After her beloved father, Nicholas Brigandy, passed away, Theresa inherited his prized estate nestled in the quiet suburbs of Long Island. It wasn't just any house, it was where she learned to read palms at the kitchen table, and where her father taught her to listen, not just with ears, but with the heart. The deed had clearly been updated a year before Nicholas's death, stating Theresa as the sole owner. But peace was short-lived. Enter Mr. Ronald Baxter, the cantankerous neighbor next door. Ronald, who had long held a quiet grudge against Nicholas over a property fence dispute from years ago, suddenly emerged with a claim. The land on which part of Nicholas's estate sat had always been his. According to Ronald, decades ago, a boundary agreement between the two men had been made over a handshake and supposedly never recorded in legal documents. Theresa, flanked by lawyers and her unshakable belief in justice, countered that her father had explicitly written the property into her name. "My dad didn't just talk to the living," she said in a press interview. "He made sure even his paperwork was clear enough to keep spirits and greedy neighbors at bay." As the legal battle heated up, Theresa began receiving signs. A light flickering at night, the smell of her father's aftershave in the hallway, a feather appearing on her front porch. She believed her father was guiding her, reminding her to stay strong. Court hearings dragged on. Witnesses were called. An old family friend who had seen Nicholas and Ronald argue over the land years ago, a lawyer who confirmed Nicholas's will and deed updates, and even a surveyor who had to remeasure the land's boundary lines. In the final hearing, Theresa stood before the judge, holding a framed picture of her father. "This property is more than just land," she said. "It's a legacy, and I intend to protect it with all the love and strength he left me." The judge adjourned for a week, and as Theresa waited, sitting on her porch, the wind whispered through the trees. She smiled softly. "Thanks, Dad," she murmured. "I know you're with me." However, Theresa Caputo had seen many things in her life: tears, laughter, disbelief, and healing. But nothing prepared her for the call she received on a rainy Thursday afternoon. "Theresa, I think my house is haunted," said a shaky voice on the other end of the line. It was a young woman named Emily from upstate New York. "It's not just noises. I feel like someone's trying to speak to me." Intrigued and sensing something powerful, Theresa packed her signature high heels and hairspray and headed to the small town nestled between fog-covered hills. When she arrived at Emily's house, a creaky old Victorian home, Theresa immediately felt it, a presence strong and restless. As soon as she stepped inside, the chandelier flickered. "Yep, we're definitely not alone," she whispered. In her signature style, she gathered Emily and her skeptical brother James in the living room. "I need you to be open. Spirits can't connect if you're all tensed up." Then it began. "I'm seeing an older woman. She's got a floral apron, and she's yelling at someone to put the pie back in the oven. Ring any bells?" Emily gasped. "That's our grandma. She always baked pies. She passed away in this house." As the spirit world opened up, more voices came through, some comforting, some emotional. One, a young man in a baseball cap, reached out to James. I never got to say goodbye," James whispered, tears in his eyes. Theresa smiled gently. "He says you don't have to. He never left your side." After a deeply emotional session, the air in the house felt lighter. Theresa stood on the porch as the rain cleared and the sun peeked through. Spirit work isn't just about the dead. It's about helping the living live again, she said, turning to leave. As she drove off, Emily and James stood in silence. The burden of unanswered questions finally lifted. However, Theresa Caputo was used to shocking people with her spirit readings. Tears, goosebumps, disbelief. But nothing prepared her for what happened during a quiet evening session in a small town outside of Montauk. Her client, Rachel, a soft-spoken librarian in her early 30s, had invited Theresa to her cozy cottage for a private reading. The room was peaceful, lit by candles and the gentle crackle of a fireplace. Theresa closed her eyes, focused her energy, and said, "There's a man here. He's tall, strong, and I feel very protective energy from him. He says your name, Rachel. He's holding a compass." Rachel's eyes widened. "That sounds like my grandfather. He was in the Navy." Theresa nodded. "Yes, that's him. But there's someone else, very quiet, very cold. They're standing in the corner." Theresa's voice trembled slightly, something rare for her. "This spirit doesn't feel like the others. It's like it's watching us." Rachel's face turned pale. That corner is always cold, even in summer." Suddenly, the candle nearest to that corner flickered violently and went out. Theresa stood up. "Okay, I don't usually get freaked out, but this is different. This isn't someone you knew, not directly. This spirit is attached to the land." A chill passed through the room. "They're not angry," Theresa said slowly, "but they've been waiting. Watching. They say they couldn't leave until someone listened." Rachel whispered, "What do they want?" Theresa stared into the corner, her eyes glossy. "To be found. They're buried under the old oak tree in your backyard." Rachel gasped. "We found bones there last summer. Thought they were animal bones." The spirit suddenly faded, and warmth returned to the room. Theresa exhaled. "That was intense. Rachel, I've never had a spirit come through like that. You need to call the authorities. That soul needs peace." Rachel nodded, shaken. Theresa grabbed her coat, her voice still shaking. "I came here expecting a simple reading. I didn't expect to meet the one spirit who's been waiting 70 years to be heard." However, Tony wasn't a believer. Ghosts, spirits, mediums. He had always chalked them up to clever tricks and wishful thinking. But after losing his sister Angela last year in a car accident, something inside him changed. When his cousin Gina gifted him a session with Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium, he laughed it off. But deep down, a part of him was curious. The day of the reading, he drove from Queens to Hicksville with low expectations and a racing heart. Theresa greeted him with her signature blonde hair teased high and an energy that was both comforting and electric. They sat in her warmly lit reading room filled with candles, crystals, and photos of loved ones. "Tony," she said, closing her eyes for a moment. "There's a young woman stepping forward. She's showing me a silver bracelet and a sunflower. Do those mean anything to you?" Tony froze. Angela used to wear a silver bracelet every day, and sunflowers were her favorite. "She says you've been blaming yourself," Theresa continued. "She wants you to stop replaying the what-ifs in your head." Tony felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't told anyone about the guilt he carried, how he'd begged Angela to come out with him that night, even though she was tired. The accident happened on her way home. Theresa's eyes softened. "She says she's okay. She's with Grandma Rosa. She's not in pain. And she forgives you. Not that you need forgiving." Tears streamed down Tony's face. In that moment, he didn't care if it was real or not. Something inside him shifted. The heaviness he'd been carrying didn't disappear, but it felt lighter. As he left, Theresa gave him a hug and whispered, "Sometimes, spirit just knows what you need to hear." Tony drove home in silence, the sunflower bracelet resting in his pocket. He still wasn't sure what he believed, but for the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe again. However, David Stone was a man of science, an engineer by trade, a rational thinker by nature. He never believed in anything that couldn't be measured, proven, or logically explained. So when his sister gifted him a ticket to a live session with Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, he nearly laughed. "This is nonsense," he muttered, but decided to go just to humor her. The venue was packed. People were buzzing with hope, tissues already in hand. David sat stiffly in his seat, arms crossed, scanning the room for signs of trickery. When Theresa Caputo entered, hair high, energy higher, David rolled his eyes. She was warm and confident, instantly commanding attention. She began walking through the audience, pointing out spirits and delivering messages. David watched, waiting to catch her slipping up. Then she stopped. "You," she said, pointing directly at him. "Your dad's coming through strong. Real strong. He's saying something about a red screwdriver and a busted radio." David froze. "My father died 10 years ago," he said, voice tight. "We used to fix radios together. He had this red-handled screwdriver he swore brought him luck." Theresa smiled gently. "He says you've been keeping it in your toolbox but never use it. He wants you to know it's okay to move on. He's proud of you, David." David's mouth parted slightly. No one knew about that screwdriver, not even his sister. Tears welled in his eyes, uninvited but undeniable. For the first time, his walls cracked. Maybe there were things science couldn't explain. Maybe, just maybe, some connections never truly break. As the session ended and the crowd dispersed, David sat still, quietly wiping his eyes. He wasn't ready to say he believed, but he wasn't ready to say he didn't either. However, skeptical his whole life, David Thompson never believed in mediums, spirits, or anything that couldn't be explained by science. A retired firefighter and father of two, David was the kind of man who needed facts, not feelings. So when his daughter Emma surprised him with tickets to a live reading by Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, for his 65th birthday, he rolled his eyes. "Emma, you know I don't believe in this stuff," he said, chuckling. "Just come with me, Dad. If nothing happens, at least we had a night out." They sat quietly in the middle of the audience as Theresa walked on stage, her iconic blonde hair high and her heels even higher. She smiled warmly and began picking up messages from Spirit, moving around the room with an uncanny confidence. Suddenly, she stopped. "I need to come right here," she said, pointing to David. He shifted uncomfortably as she approached. "Did your father pass from a heart-related issue?" she asked gently. David froze. His father had died of a heart attack 20 years ago, something he never talked about. Theresa continued, "He's showing me a coin. A silver dollar. He says you keep it in your top drawer, and you take it out when you miss him." Emma gasped. David looked down, eyes wide. It was true, he had kept his father's old silver dollar tucked away, something no one but him knew. Then came the words that broke him. He said that he watched every fire you ran into and prayed you'd come out. He says you were his hero. Tears welled in David's eyes. He tried to hold them back, but they spilled over, decades of grief suddenly rushing out. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe, just a little, that maybe, just maybe, his father was still with him. After the show, David looked at Emma. "Thank you," he whispered, voice cracking. "That meant more than you'll ever know." However, it was a quiet afternoon in Long Island. The sun cast golden rays through the stained glass windows of a cozy community center where Theresa Caputo had set up for a small, intimate reading. People sat in folding chairs, hearts open, eyes filled with hope. Among them was an 8-year-old girl named Lily, her small hands clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Her mother had passed away in a car accident the previous year, and since then, Lily hadn't spoken much. Her father brought her here, not really expecting anything, just hoping for a sliver of peace for his daughter. As Theresa moved around the room, stopping to speak to people, she suddenly paused. Her eyes widened slightly, and she turned toward Lily. "Who's Lily?" she asked gently. The room went quiet as the girl's father raised his hand. "That's my daughter," he said, voice tight with emotion. Theresa knelt down so she could be at Lily's eye level. "Sweetheart, your mommy's been talking to me. She says she sees you hugging your bear every night, and she wants you to know she's right there with you when you do." Lily's eyes filled with tears. Her fingers tightened around the teddy bear. "She says she used to sing 'You Are My Sunshine' to you every night. Do you remember that?" Theresa asked. Lily nodded slowly, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "Your mommy wants you to know she still sings it, just really softly, so soft you can almost hear it in your dreams. And she says your smile is her favorite thing in the world. She misses it." For the first time in months, Lily smiled. Theresa placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "She loves you more than all the stars in the sky, and she's always going to be watching over you." The room was silent except for the sound of sniffles and a few gasps. Lily leaned in and whispered, "Thank you." Theresa nodded, eyes glistening. "No, sweetheart. Thank you for being so brave." And in that moment, with nothing more than a few words and a heart full of love, a little girl's healing had begun. However, it was a rainy Thursday afternoon in Long Island, and the studio was quieter than usual. Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, was preparing for a private session with a new client named Emily Hart. Emily was a soft-spoken young woman who had traveled all the way from Vermont with a single item clutched tightly in her hand, an old heart-shaped locket. As Emily sat across from Theresa, nervous but hopeful, Theresa immediately clutched her own chest. "Whoa," she said, her signature nails tapping against the table. "I'm getting a very strong female presence. Older, protective, almost like a grandmother energy." Emily's eyes welled up. "My grandmother raised me. She passed when I was 16. Theresa nodded slowly. "She's showing me the locket, says it's more than just jewelry." Emily looked down at the locket in her palm. "It was hers. I wear it every day." Theresa went quiet, her eyes distant. "She's saying there's something hidden in it. A message, a name?" Confused, Emily opened the locket for the first time in years. Inside the tiny compartment behind her grandmother's photo, folded tightly, was a yellowed piece of paper. Shaking, Emily pulled it out and carefully unfolded it. Scrawled in delicate handwriting were the words, "Find your sister, Lily. She's alive." Emily gasped. I don't have a sister." Theresa looked at her gently. "Your grandmother says you do, and she's been trying to tell you all along." Over the following weeks, the message unraveled a mystery Emily never knew existed. Her mother had given birth to twins, but was forced to give one up due to medical complications. The family had kept it a secret until now. Thanks to Theresa's reading, Emily not only found a missing piece of her past, but also discovered a sister she never knew she had, living just a few towns away. Hello lovely viewers, welcome to my channel. I am Mina, hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.